Today I'm going to be talking to Adelina, and she is living in a tiny home. And I know lots of people had asked me questions about a tiny home, but she is living in it. She's gone through the process, so she will take us through, various process of how she came to the tiny home and living in a tiny home. So welcome, Adelina.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So tell us about your experience with the tiny home.
Oh my goodness. Well, as you said, I'm living in a tiny house here in Calgary. And I am, as far as I know, the only legally parked tiny house on wheels in the city limits. And yeah, I've been here for about a year and a half, and I had been dreaming and planning about tiny houses for about 5 years before that. It's been a dream of mine ever since my first son left home, and there was just me and the younger one, and I was in a small condo, and I looked around and I thought, I have way too much room for what I need. And I've always wanted to just live in a small space, minimize my footprint, and get rid of the things that I didn't serve me and that I didn't really love, and just maybe spend my money traveling a little bit, or maybe I'll retire early. I'm not sure, but what I wanted to do was give myself options. And I've always loved tiny homes, campers, things like that. So I don't know, about probably 6 years ago, I saw my first video on tiny houses on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I never recovered from that. That was it for me. I just went down that rabbit hole, and the more I saw about them, the more I loved the idea of just having such a small space to clean and maintain. And it just became a dream of mine. And I just started planning.
Okay, that's awesome. So you started planning, and where did the planning take you?
Oh, well, a lot of people say to me that they would love to live in a tiny house, but, I still have a family at home, or, but I have too much stuff. I could never downsize, or, I can't do it right now. And I say that you don't have to do everything at once. Like, I started with just watching videos, and then I started reading blogs. And then as time went on, and I came closer to the point where I could do it. I could actually sell my condo because my younger one was going to move out. Then I got more serious. I started to draw out floor plans and research builders in Canada. I didn't want to use one in the US. And then as time got further along, and I got closer and closer to the date where I could put my condo on the market and actually put a design deposit down and start that process, I then started interviewing builders and talking to people who lived in their houses. But I got to nerd out with people that loved the same thing I did, and some were building their own houses and others were building with a builder. But again, it kept my dream alive.
Yeah.
So I sort of set myself a goal to always be doing something that was moving me towards my goal, my dream, even if it was just watching videos, even if it was just reading articles. And then the closer it came to me being able to do something substantial to make it a reality, put my house on the market, and then I started doing bigger things. So people say they like the idea of a tiny house, but it's not for them. I totally agree. It's not for everybody. But the people that say I could never give up my stuff, I say, like anything in life, when you really want something, you're willing to make sacrifices. So I did. I got rid of 2/3 of my things, and now I'm here.
Wow, that's amazing. To get rid of 2/3 of your things. Wow, that is absolutely amazing, because we have so much stuff. I look around my own home and definitely have way too much stuff.
Yeah, I brought one piece of furniture from my old place to the tiny house.
Okay.
It's a little handmade bench my son made that I use as a coffee table. Nothing else would fit in here.
So did you have to get the furniture custom made, or were you able to go to, say, like an IKEA or somewhere to purchase?
Yeah, actually, the couch is an oversized love seat that I bought from a regular furniture store. And then the bed is from IKEA, and it lifts up in their storage. And that's really, other than a little ottoman and some stools, that's really the only furniture there is in here.
And so once you're downsizing, you've got it now, you're ready to go. You've been doing this for a while. So what was your next step?
Yeah, I downsized. I decided that I got a small inheritance from a piece of property my mom owned with her siblings. It wasn't much, but it was enough for me to put the design deposit down and start the process of building the floor plan. I saw that as a sign, so I did. I already knew what builder I was going to use. I had traveled down to BC to interview a builder out there who does beautiful homes, and then I interviewed a couple in Alberta, and I got as soon as I met my builder, who's a woman. Turns out that company's owned by a woman. She was just amazing, and I felt a connection right away. And I'm a big believer in trusting your gut. And so when I talked to her versus talking to a few of the other builders, she was as excited about my project as I was. And that's what I wanted, because this is the only house I'm going to build. It's the only house I've ever built.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be super excited, and I wanted my builder to be as excited about it as I was. And she certainly was. And the design process was so much fun, because she's an interior designer by trade, and she's worked in the building industry, conventional building industry, for years and years. And so the whole process was just so much fun. I came to her knowing pretty much what I wanted and what my priorities were for my build, because I knew this was going to be my only home, not my vacation home. I wanted a big kitchen, because I like to cook for family and friends. I wanted a bedroom I could stand up in, so I didn't have to crawl up into a loft and be on my hands and knees to make my bed. And I wanted a dedicated office space, because when I started my build, I was working from home 3 days a week. Now and not just due to the pandemic, but now I work from home. I'll be working from home full time. So I needed a dedicated office space. And I have to use air quotes for that. And everything else I was willing to compromise on. But because I came to her with such a definite idea of what I wanted, I also wanted a gooseneck trailer, which is like a fifth wheel trailer, because they're much easier to transport. They're more stable. I wanted to go wider than street legal by a foot, and fairly long. So I really knew what I wanted. So when I started working with her, it was really easy.
When you put that deposit down, was that, in a typical, when you go to the bank, when you go to a new builder, you're needing to put 5 to 10% down. Was that sort of the same process, or did they require that amount, or was it more because it's a tiny home? How did that get that structure?
Well, the builder, the design deposit was $5,000. That starts the floor planning and all of that. And then once you say, yeah, okay, we're going to go ahead with this, and of course that gets taken off the price of the house. And one of the reasons I wanted to go with a professional builder was because I wanted a builder that was CSA certified. And Teacup Tiny Homes, the builder in Lethbridge that I used, is CSA certified and RVIA certified. Those are two certifications for mobile homes and RVs and that fall into that sort of umbrella. And the reason I wanted to use a builder that was certified is because I knew that would give me more options of places to park down the road. Municipalities, counties, cities, towns, they're going to want to know that a tiny house that if they're going to allow it to be legally parked, is built to some sort of code, has been inspected along the way, is safe. And when you use a builder who's certified, that's what you get. You get inspections at each stage. And I know that a lot of houses that are seen online are really inexpensive. They're built by their owners, and but that's not something that I didn't want to do that, because I knew that it would really limit my parking ability, and it did, because where I'm parked now, legally, they would not have accepted me if this build did not have the CSA certification.
Okay.
And so I would have taken that right off the table, and then where would I have been? So anyways, yes, the design deposit went down, and then I was ready to put my first deposit, and actual building deposit, because you're right, it was broken up into stages, and the first one was to order the trailer, because the house is built on a custom built trailer, and based on the floor plan. And so that was $22,000 just for the trailer alone. And so I paid that. And then once the trailer was in, then that took about 3 or 4 weeks. Then I put another third down for materials. So you were basically like you would in a regular build. I understand. I've never actually built a house. Was that, you did it in stages. So I did my design deposit, the trailer I paid for, and then there was 2 more deposits left. Yes, 2. And then a final one, which was not that big, but it just it took into account all of the changes I'd made and things like that. Yeah. So at the time, you couldn't get a mortgage for a tiny house because it's not property. And I sold my condo, but this was in 2018. 18. I've been here. Yes. Oh, when was it? When I sold my place, you can edit that out. When I sold my place, I didn't get what I would have gotten a few years earlier, right? Because the market is so bad. And so I still needed to get a small loan to finish the build. And it was difficult to get. I first of all, I wanted a little bridge financing from when I actually got my money from my condo to when I took possession of the house. When I sold my place, I didn't get what I would have gotten a few years earlier, right? Because the market is so bad. And so I still needed to get a small loan to finish the build. And it was difficult to get. I first of all, I wanted a little bridge financing from when I actually got my money from my condo to when I took possession of the house. And I couldn't get my bank to do that because the house wasn't actually built yet. So then I had to figure that out. And then at the end, I just took a small personal loan. The banks that I dealt with had a hard time even understanding what this is. And only ATB actually at that time had on the books a policy for lending for tiny homes. But they require 20% of your own money already in, because there's a lot of, you need to have also a lease for, I think, at least a year for a parking spot. Like there's a lot of restrictions for lending for a tiny house. And basically it comes down to the fact that it's on wheels, so somebody can pick it up and pull it away. So, but yeah, we did it in stages. In the meantime, I went down to Lethbridge to see the house under construction, which was so much fun. And then I went down a few days before I was bringing her home just to do the walkthrough and go over the systems and everything with the builder. And that was a ton of fun. I took my best friend with me. Up until that point, she just thought I was crazy. First of all, she never thought I would do it. I think when it finally became a reality, that was a big surprise because people talk about doing things for a long time, and then it's actually happening. And she still didn't get it. She still didn't get it until I took her down with me to do the walkthrough. And as soon as she walked in, and we were in here for a few minutes, then she looks at me. She goes, "Okay, I get it. I totally get it. Like you just belong here. Like this, it all makes sense now. And that was really interesting because up until that point, when you've never been in one, you don't really know what to expect. And you think they're going to be, some of them are super small and cramped, but people that walk into my house, they all say the same thing. It's a lot bigger inside than I thought it would be. And I could live here.
Which is good.
As soon as my kids leave home or whatever, comes after that. But they all say that, right? So, yeah. And then in the meantime, I had looked for a place to park, thinking I wouldn't find a space in the city, and that I would be outside the city limits, maybe in a farmer's field or something like that. So I had thought, okay, what will I need for solar and a compost toilet, or if I don't have, septic. And a friend of mine said, well, what about a mobile homes? Or no, actually what he said was, why don't you just buy a mobile home, is what he said. And that got me thinking about mobile home parks. And I knew that they had closed a lot of them in the city. And I didn't know if they even still existed. And so then I started fooling around, and I found a fellow who was an agent for like a real estate agent, I guess, but he sells tiny houses, mobile homes.
Yeah.
And that's when I learned that the parks that had closed were the city-owned parks. And that land being so valuable, they really wanted it for other uses. But where I am is a privately owned park. And the company is based in Vancouver and owns mobile home parks across Canada, several of which are in Calgary. And, from my understanding is that they have no intentions of selling right now. Who knows what the future holds. But because it was a mobile home park, it's zoned slightly differently. And so that meant that I had the potential of moving in. And this is where, using a CSA certified builder was, important. And also, when you build a tiny house, it's on a trailer. The trailer has wheels, obviously, so it's a vehicle. So it has a VIN number, just like your car.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be registered as something. And there are three options for something with wheels. You can register as an RV, you can register as a mobile home, or you can register as a park model. And in Alberta, at least at the time, I don't know if it's changed, you could not live in an RV year round. You can in a mobile home, and I think there are, and you can in a park model if you're in the right place, but you can't anywhere in an RV. So I knew I couldn't register my trailer as an RV.
No.
It didn't. If I had registered it as a mobile home, that meant when it got parked, it had the tires and axles had to come off, and it had to get blocked up. So I didn't want to register it as a mobile home, which left a park model, and which is what it's registered as. So when I came to talk to the park, not only did I bring my blueprints, which had an engineer stamp on them so that they could see this was being professionally built, I brought printouts from the builder's website that showed the certification, and I brought pictures of what my house would look like, because most people have no idea. And so because I had all of that, and because I was able to tell them how I had registered the trailer, and they already had a park model in the park, which I didn't know, they were happy to have me. They had a couple of lots available, one of which was fairly small for a mobile home, but really big for a tiny home. And yeah, so I found that spot probably 3 months before the house was done. So I started the build without it. And I think that's what caused the most stress for my friend, was the fact I had no place to park this thing and it was almost done. And so, yeah, I had made the arrangements to hired a professional to move it, and followed her down the highway to Calgary. And so that was a year ago, July 8th.
Okay.
And so I've been here one full winter, one full summer, headed into the second winter.
And now tell me, how has winter been? And as far as the heating in the tiny home, like, are you hooked up to the city's electricity? Like, how is that part of it? Because I know with mobile homes, yes, they're hooked up to the city, but with a tiny home, how is that?
Yeah, in order to park here, I have to be hooked up to city utilities. I mean, I
Okay.
suppose I could have solar, but so I'm hooked up to water and sewer
Okay.
and electrical. I have the same sort of plug and outlets and everything that you would see on an RV.
Okay.
But I had a plumber here to hook everything up when I moved in, and an electrician and all of that. So that, because I had to be hooked up to city utilities.
Okay.
Someday I'd like to be, when I move out of the city, I'd like to be a little bit more off grid. So I would like to have solar and a compost toilet, and maybe, I guess, I don't have water tanks in the house, but I have the space under the gooseneck that I have as a shed where I would put my propane bottles and my, a water tank if I needed that, if I didn't have, a septic. But the house is on natural gas. When I built the house, I planned on having a propane furnace, stove, and on-demand hot water tank. The fridge was always going to be electric, and the washer-dryer combo unit is electric. When I found my parking spot, I realized that, actually, it's a good thing I realized when I did, but I realized a little bit farther into my build than I would have liked, that the park wouldn't allow propane appliances inside the unit.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to switch the stove and the furnace to natural gas, which was very simple. It's just changing a fitting on the end of the hose. So that was easy. But the hot water tank, on-demand hot water tank, was a problem. So we ended up with a tank, a 60-gallon tank. But luckily I had space for it. I couldn't, for a couple of reasons, get an on-demand a hot water tank for the amperage of the house and the size that I needed.
Okay.
And so right now I'm hooked up to full utilities, and it's kind of nice.
Well, especially since, I mean, today it's nice outside, but we know that, come January, February here in Calgary, it's going to be cold, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So that's nice that you're hooked up to city then. And what would you say is the cost of your utilities right now in the tiny home?
Well, I have a forced air furnace. It's an RV furnace. So, and most of my lights are LED. And it's in such a small space. When I look at my bills for electric and gas, and I actually look at the bill, and I look at the delivery charges and the taxes and all the fees, and then the usage. My natural gas last winter, on a typical month, just usage was something like $11. But the bill was something like $30-some, $38, $37, because of all of the delivery fees and taxes and all of those things. And the same with my electric. My electric bill ended up being at around, and of course I was plugging my car into, it would be anywhere from 89 to 110 or something like that, in the middle of winter with, all the lights on and furnace running and all of that. But of that, it would be like $45 would be my actual usage. And so that's what's so frustrating, because the bills are a lot smaller than they were in my condo. But they can only get so small because of all of those fees that you pay for being on city utilities. So, but my expenses here are so much less than they were when I was married years ago. When I had a big house, they went down quite a bit when I moved into my condo. But even then, I was paying almost double what I'm paying here. So it depends. But it's not an expensive place to run, and It certainly heats up fast, and it's very energy efficient because I have good R value. I have spray foam, closed cell spray foam insulation, and it's 2x4 framing, and I have, brand new good quality windows. So I don't. Last winter we had that really cold spell where everybody had frost on their windows and everything.
Yep.
Well, I did too. but it wasn't any colder than anybody else's.
Yeah.
I am on a trailer, so people ask if the floor is cold. Again, it's spray foam insulated and it's sheathed underneath with tin, so it's sealed. I do have the house skirted in, so that helps insulate things. So I don't think my floor is any colder than a regular laminate or hardwood floor would be if you walked on it barefoot. I wear slippers, so it doesn't matter. But the house is very cozy, and the nice thing is it heats up fast. I turn the heat way down at night, and in the morning when I get up, it heats up like that because it's not even 400 square feet if I count the loft. So it's very small.
Yeah. And you're right. The electricity, gas, it's not the usage, it's all the administration fees. I always look at that and just think, oh my goodness, like I've only used $30, but everything else comes to like $90 in the admin fee. And that's why I think a lot of people with tiny homes do take them off the grid, because it does cost quite a bit more within the city, right?
For sure. Absolutely. And that's the thing, right? If I lived in a small town, it would probably be less. Certainly if I was more off grid, it would be less. But I didn't really build the house to be 100% off grid. I'm not moving into the middle of the wilderness. I'd like to move to the island, or maybe into somewhere in BC, so there's no snow or as much snow as we have here. But I did build the house to withstand a Canadian winter. Yeah. And I think that there was a couple of considerations. I knew I lived in Alberta for now, but I knew I wanted to move to the island down the road. So here we have, cold, snowy, dry climate. So I made sure that I used a really good insulation, and I have standing seam metal roof so that the snow slides off easily. And, I took those things into consideration. I made sure I had a good furnace that was the right BTUs for the square footage of the house. And I have an air exchange system, a Lunas air exchange system. So with the heat recovery, so it makes sure that the air inside the house is clean, and it manages any moisture inside the house, but it also, recovers the heat that's going out and warms up the air coming in. So I was thinking about those things. But I knew that down the road I'd be in humid climate. So I wanted windows that were all awning so that I could have them open if it rained. Now the builder didn't allow me to have both windows in the loft and the bedroom as awning, because for egress, one of them could not be in each space, could not be an awning. But the rest of them open, so that way. So if I'm in a climate where it rains a lot, I can have my windows open. And I used plywood sheathing for the house instead of OSB, because plywood withstands moisture so much better than OSB. It's also lighter, which is a bonus, but it's more expensive, but it was worth it for me. Again, I had the air exchange system added because humidity is a problem in any small space, and it's important to manage it. And if you move to a humid climate, it's even more important. So I kept those things in mind. But the biggest question that people ask me, they ask me three questions. They ask me how much it cost. They ask me, well, how did I find a parking spot, or where do I find a parking spot? And they ask me, what's it like in the winter?
Yeah.
So as far as in the winter, when we had that cold spell last winter, I had so many people texting me or phoning me, how are you doing in that tiny house? I'm like, I'm not in a tent. It's a house. It just happens to be on a custom built trailer. I'm fine. I don't know what they thought was going to happen, but it's very cozy, very stable, very well built by a professional. If I had built it, it would have been in pieces, but so they asked me that question. They asked me how I found my parking spot, and I went into that. I think you got to make sure that you're building your house in a way that gives you the most options. So again, if you want to ever park in a place where there are regulations in building codes. Use a builder that's certified, and make sure you're careful about how you register your trailer depending on where you live. And then what did it cost? Well, I set the budget at $125,000 to build. But then once I got started in the process, I decided to go a few feet longer, and I also decided to go a foot wider. So she's 9.5 feet wide on the outside and 37 feet long to the front of the gooseneck.
Okay.
And, of course, that added cost because the trailer had to be custom built for that. And everything in here is custom. The cabinets are all custom cabinets. They're not IKEA cabinets. And so, and I made some changes. I added a couple of more windows because I knew I wanted it bright in my home. And, you know, I have the custom cabinetry beside the desk. So it ended up costing me about 150-ish plus tax. And that was all decisions I made, you know, and that includes the appliances, the washer dryer combo unit, the fridge, stove, you know, furnace and all of that. So for me, it was worth it because this is my forever home. And I've certainly seen RVs that were well over that price. And this is built so much better than that. It's built just like your house. So, yeah, some people will say that's really expensive. Some people will say she's really big. I didn't set out to build the smallest tiny house I could, and I didn't set out to build the cheapest tiny house I could. I set out to build the perfect tiny house for me, and every decision I made, I was very thoughtful about in deciding what was worth it and what I could compromise on.
And when you think about it, I mean, like you said, we are in Alberta, and we have to think about the weather. So spray foam, for instance, would that have been part of the normal process for your builder, or was that something that you had to upgrade to? Just because I know when I was a kid, my mom's best friend lived at the time in a mobile home. And my Lord, that was the coldest place I'd ever been into my life. I mean, just thinking about it right now, I'm getting the shivers. We had sweaters on whenever we went, and we would bring our fluffy slippers. And by the time we left there, we were still cold. I remember telling my mom, there's no way, we cannot stay here for more than like 20 minutes, Mom. It's so cold. And there's 8 kids. So we did not like going to visit because it was so small.
And so regarding the spray foam installation, so first of all, when I took that tiny house building workshop, it was invaluable because I learned about trailers, I learned about insulation, I learned about healthy building products, I learned about you know, managing the moisture and air quality in your house, so many things. And one of the things we learned about was structural integrity of this house, because it's stick framed. And you're taking it down the highway, and it's like going through a hurricane, right? So you want to make sure that structure is as solid as possible, affixed to the trailer as well as possible, and really going to be able to withstand that. And one of the things about spray foam, first of all, it is standard with my builder, to answer your question. Secondly, the reason it's so important to use, even though I'm not going to move my house all that often, but especially if you're going to move your house all that often, but it doesn't really matter, is adding spray foam makes your house so much more rigid and solid that it withstands the being transported so much better. So when we moved it from Lethbridge here, there wasn't a single thing that my doorknob shifted a little bit because it was locked in, you know, from the movement. I had to tighten that a bit, but every window frame, every miter corner, everything is just as solid as when it came out of that shop. And the spray foam insulation really adds to that. If you're not going to use spray foam insulation, you have to use things like hurricane strapping, that these metal strips that are put on while the house is still just open. Then you put your siding on over top of that just to keep things rigid, because otherwise it's just shifting and loosening up as it's going down the highway. So it served so many more, so, you know, an extra purpose. It keeps the house super warm, but then it also adds so much structure to it. When people watch my tiny house video, they're shocked at how much storage I built in. And even though the goal is not to fill every nook and cranny with stuff, you don't have, a basement. You don't have a garage to put things in. I have a little shed that I built underneath the gooseneck, which holds a lot, but you don't have the same spaces that you do in your house. And so I don't have a linen cupboard. And so I made sure to build storage everywhere I could, because it's okay to have too much. It's a real hassle when you don't have enough.
It's kind of cool that you found a female building to tiny houses so she can relate to us, right? We need certain areas. We need, in the bathroom for, the feminine products and things like that. So
and your makeup.
Makeup,
yeah, and your closet, right? That it's important to have space for things. People, I joke that I have a crawl-in closet, but I don't actually have to crawl into my closet to get my stuff. I can reach in and get like 3-4 feet's worth of stuff. And then after that are the things that are out of season, and this is storage. So I crawl in there if I need to, but in general, it's huge. It's huge. And I have the storage under the bed, and there's so much storage in here, and it makes me so happy because it's so efficient. I explained what I wanted for my closet in my bedroom, that I wanted the floor of the closet to be the roof of the bathroom, and for it to go like it's deep. Like that she just took that and said, yeah, we could do that. And it was just so much fun. She was amazing. She's an amazing person. And she just loves what she does, and she's so creative. And when you work with and she's so enthusiastic, and when you work with somebody like that, it's so much fun.
Yeah. And
I don't know a lot of people who've built a house and are still talking to their builders, let alone consider them a friend now, right?
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate.
When I came across your video, on YouTube, and we're definitely going to link your channel down below in the description box. We're going to make sure that we put your channel. And when I came across it, though, I thought, wow, a woman built this. I'm so excited. I have to reach out to you. It was exciting. And from your channel, I could see how enthusiastic you were about your builder, as well as just building that tiny home, right? For me, I got excited just hearing you talk about her and how she was in getting your, actually looking at what you want, right? She didn't say, no, I can't do that, or you shouldn't do that. She was excited about it. And I could feel that from your channel. So yeah.
She had to tell me no a couple of times, because, sometimes, like with the windows, right? No, one of your windows in your bedroom has to be an egress window, and one of the windows in the loft has to be an egress window. Okay. You're the professional. And I had thought that it would be really cool to find a reclaimed old wooden door for my front door. And she said, I can't put it on and have it pass inspection. She says, if you want to switch your door out after, that's totally up to you. But for it to be built to code and pass inspection, you have to have a fire rated door, and it can't be a reclaimed door. And I couldn't use reclaimed windows and things like that, which I hadn't really wanted to, because I want good windows. But so sometimes that's where her expertise and why you work with a professional. But otherwise, it was like picking up the colors and the cabinets and doing the layout. And at first we had the desk here, but I didn't really like it, because as soon as you walked in, you saw it, and we played around, and we did Zoom calls for the design, because she was in Lethbridge. This was before all of this. And she would send me pictures and videos at the end of each week of the build. And it was such a great process. Super empowering, because, I was making decisions about my home, and I felt super supported, and the process was awesome. And the best part is, all the people that didn't believe I was going to do it, now they love it, right? Or, I always say, tell a woman she can't do something and stand back and watch her do it.
Amen.
So that's basically the way it was. And the people that didn't understand it, they do now, because now they see me in it and it all makes sense, sort of thing.
Quick question. What about guests? Now, I know you said you have 2 boys. Where do they sleep when they come over, or do they?
Well, they both live in Calgary, so that's not an issue, but that's where the loft came in. So my thought with building the house, like I said, is because I'm 55 years old and I don't want to climb a ladder into a loft and be on my hands and knees to go to bed. And because I have to pee half the time. And so I wanted a bedroom I could stand in. And that's where the gooseneck design was so handy, because that space goes over to the truck bed when it's being pulled. So it's kind of extra, and it's the perfect size for a bedroom. And so that's there's stairs, there's 3 steps. They're a little steeper than standard, but so I can stand in there, but I still wanted the loft because I knew that if I ever had guests, I have an inflatable queen size mattress. I can put them up there, or say I decided to build a tiny log cabin somewhere and I was going to give this or sell this to my son.
Is there anything else that you want to tell us about a tiny home that you think the listeners need to know?
You know what I say, if this is what you want to do, then just start watching videos, reading articles, reaching out to people who live in them, asking questions, go talk to builders, look at their websites. This is becoming so much more common, but don't let anybody tell you can't do it, because you can. Don't let anybody tell you that you will never be able to make it happen, because you will. Just make sure you surround yourself with people who support your dream. A goal without a plan is just a dream, right? So as long as you have a plan and you're doing something to move towards that, then it's gonna come true. But yeah, I mean, I love it. It's not for everybody, but it should definitely be an option for some people who want to live a smaller, more sustainable, more minimal, or even more mobile lifestyle. This is perfect.
And you have your YouTube channel. So what is the name of your YouTube channel?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is called My Big Tiny House Life. And so if you search for that, you'll find me. I've been making videos for a year now. I started just before Christmas last year, and I decided to start it because I kept getting asked the same questions over and over and over again. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just make videos so that I can answer those questions. And I thought I would continue to make videos until I ran out of ideas. I'm nowhere near running out of ideas. And there's not a lot of Canadian content online about people who are actually living in their tiny houses in Canada and in a colder climate. And I think that's really valuable too.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a lot of people from the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, they have some cold climates there too, but those aren't the houses you see online very often.
I really enjoyed the channel. I've really enjoyed learning about tiny homes. It's something that I think is great. It's always ATB, a great Alberta company that supports locals. So I love that part of it as well. And I love that you found somebody in Lethbridge, 2.5 hours away from us. And I love that it was a female. I gotta tell you, I love it. Woo!
Oh, and yeah, it was great. As women, if we can lift each other up, then everybody wins. And she was incredible. So she kicks butt. There's no doubt about it.
Awesome. What was her name again, and what's the name of her company? And we'll add this to the YouTube description as well.
Yeah, it's always in my video descriptions too. The company is called Teacup Tiny Homes, and her name is Jen McCarthy, and she's just awesome. Like, she's just a good soul and a wonderful, enthusiastic spirit, and and a lot of fun to work with.
Awesome. Awesome. Before I let you go, anything else you want to let the viewers know about tiny homes?
No, I think that's it. I think that's it. I'm going to say to you that when everything dies down and we're able to actually meet new people, you should definitely come for a visit.
I am so coming. I'm excited to see the tiny home. I'm excited to meet you in person. Yeah. I love the idea of Zoom, that we can all get together, but I'm one of those touchy-feely people. And so I'm a hugger so ready for hugs.
Yes. I know. If I didn't have my kids in my bubble, I don't know what I wouldn't have survived this long, because cats don't like them. And I'm a hugger. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to our hug when we finally can actually do it. Thank you so much for everything. And thanks for agreeing to do this. It was a spur of the moment and it's wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to when you move to Victoria and the next journey.
Thank you. Thank you for interviewing me. I can talk about this all day, but all right.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Okay.